Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. When we talk about artificial intelligence in higher education and business today, the conversation usually focuses on capability. What can AI do? But as these AI models become deeply embedded in our daily workflows, a much more critical question is what is the AI risk today? To explore what this means for teaching, learning, and enterprise governance, I am joined today by two leaders looking at this challenge from complementary angles. Sébastien Favre is the founder of Neo Mundi, an independent AI governance and metrology initiative designed to observe AI stability and factual risk in real-time production systems. And also joining me is Thomas Hormaza Dow, business professor at Champlain College at St. Lambert, director of the Business Physics AI Simulation Lab, and co-creator of the React framework for higher education. Sebastian, Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Dobson. Hello,
Thank you
Thomas.
so much. Hi. Hi, Sébastien.
Before we dive into AI risk and governance, let's go back to late 2020 when ChatGPT launched this AI boom. Looking back, did either of you predict we would move this fast from how do we use this new tool to how do we track its daily instability? Sebastian, when did you first realize the conversation was about to change?
At first, I hear that everybody was asking what can AI can do. And I started asking another question. Can we trust a machine if we do not measure how it behaves? AI was becoming part of the life, of work, of education and decision, but we were still thinking about capability and performance. So my realization was simple. A dynamic system cannot be understood by measuring it once. So the question became, does it behave the same way tomorrow and after tomorrow and over time? So trust is my question, is the question, and measurement is the starting point. And this matter even more in education
Mm.
because students may treat an AI answer as something fixed. And
Mm.
I'm sure that Thomas sees the human side of that every day.
Thomas, building on that, as an educator watching this unfold, when did you realize that traditional teaching and grading were built on assumptions that don't hold up when the technology keeps changing?
Yeah, and that was surprising. I have to admit that I was probably like every other teacher. The worst part is that I have friends who are software developers, very good in AI. They were telling me during parties we're eating and say, "Oh, I'm using AI for this," and this is early on.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, good for you. I'm a teacher. We'll see what happens. And then it caught up.
Mm.
2023, I remember receiving a ton of reports, essays on time, and they looked perfect. They looked similar. And this is where you have to ask, yeah, exactly. You have to ask yourself what's going on. Back then, AI was not as advanced. So let's say the ChatGPT and so on. So you could read it and say, yeah, it sounds a little bit like a machine. Uh, but if we fast forward to today, very difficult to detect, even if you look at it, very, very difficult. So what has changed? At that moment, I remember speaking with a fellow professor, Professor Morris Nasi, and he was giving me advice. And he was saying, you may have to accept that teaching will never be the same. That the students have a brand new tool that's going to go really, really fast, going to get much better than that. And he helped me to realize that we're going to have to change the way that we evaluate, the way that we present, the way that we engage. Um, and that's when he showed me a reflective journal. I thought it was brilliant. It was a very good start to have a discussion, an open discussion with students,
Mm,
and to say, are you aware of the risks? Are you making your own decisions? Are you bypassing your own learning process? So eventually, Morris and I would work again together, and we would publish the React framework to
mm,
teach judgment in the use
mm,
of AI.
Wonderful. You know why I chuckle? Because when you say they look similar, so that sounds so similar.
Yeah, I think educators can relate to what I've just mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The early realization brings us right to where we are today. Sebastian, Neomundi tracks things like real-time AI stability and semantic drift. What does AI reliability fluctuation look like in practice?
Okay. Think about the weather.
Hmm,
You don't measure the temperature just once on Monday and assume that
hmm,
information holds good for the entire week.
hmm,
Conditions change, it's raining, it's shining, it's sunning, so new measurements are taken.
hmm,
AI behavior can also evolve over time. A response might become longer, less clear, less coherent, more repetitive, or sometimes even incorrect.
hmm,
So at Neomundi, our role is to measure this change.
hmm,
Neomundi is a kind of weather station for AI behavior.
hmm.
AI behavior can change over time, so we measure this change.
Great. That back-end reality is eye-opening. Thomas, students often treat AI answers as exact facts. How do these hidden back-end shifts affect what happens to the classroom?
It can have a significant impact on the classroom. My first concern is that it's going to affect their learning and they're not getting what they signed up for, that their degrees um, will not represent the learning that they should have had. So the back-end fluctuations, from the perspective of a tool, it's very interesting. Just like I mentioned earlier, that it changes the way that we evaluate things because I'm looking out for specific cases where the students may not be reaching the optimal learning. Sebastien is doing a similar thing from the tool perspective because
Mm,
maybe you're not getting the optimal input as well as the output.
mm,
So I would say that this is an opportunity to have an open discussion. It's a teaching moment. It
mm,
allows us to, in fact, discuss the risks that are involved in the use of AI in the first place. And in fact, I'm happy to announce that Sebastien and I we're working on a pedagogical application in my class
mm,
so that instead of going through the process of um, checking to see, oh, I caught you using AI, it's much more positive. We're showing them the tool and they're going to be able to see for themselves
mm,
that it could change from day to day.
mm,
My role is to continue to promote the development of judgment.
mm.
So if I can show them a tool like this and develop the judgment to seek out other tools and to preserve your critical thinking, then that's what I'm going to do.
It's clear there is a big disconnect between what users expect and what the system does. Sebastian, when you see unexpected drift in an AI model, what is the immediate impact on someone relying on it?
To be simply, the human cost is very simple: waste time and avoidable mistakes. Imagine you are driving to the beach, but the road has changed and nobody tell you. You keep driving in the wrong direction. you lose time, you may take an unnecessary risk.
Mm,
And it's similar with AI. If the system changes silently,
mm,
people may continue to use it in the
mm,
same way.
mm,
Measurement give you a chance to see the change and
mm,
adapt before the cost.
mm,
So you can waste time and you
mm,
can make mistake without even realizing it. The
mm,
real human cost is making decision
mm,
without knowing that the
mm.
system has changed.
Yeah.
We've seen everything in my classes. So because it's business administration with AI, but previous to that, it was computer science and entrepreneurship and so on. Hallucinations come up very often.
Mm,
And the thing is that they're so convincing. It really looks like this is a fact from history, from this
mm,
date to that date. I'll give you a very quick example. I've seen an hallucination where uh, we we were trying to look at what are the lakes in my region, and this was just for fun, me and my wife. And I said, is it possible that Vikings got all the way to our region? And we're in Sherbrooke, close to the U.S. border, southern Quebec. And it didn't want to displease us, so it was giving us answer. Yes, of course, this lake is called after the Thor, the god of the Norse, and so on. So it created this entire hallucination. So I gave that as an example to my students in my class, and I said, be careful, because
yeah.
it doesn't want to displease you. It will tell
Mm,
you exactly what you want to hear. So
yeah.
having a tool like this and at least developing the
Mm,
habit
mm.
of considering that today it might be rainy, so bring an umbrella is the same thing as today AI may not be reliable, so think twice about the decisions that you're going to make.
Right. That real world impact shows why static policies aren't keeping up. We need actual measurement. Sebastian, traditional governance relies on written rules and periodic checks. What key details does live monitoring catch that static rules completely miss?
Okay, I'm going to use again an image
Okay.
and the road example. The rules say the speed limit is 19,
Mm,
for example.
mm,
But if it's raining or snowing, 19 may not be the right decision. So the rule is still useful, but it does not tell you the condition of the road now.
mm,
With AI, live measurement can show change in stability, currents, response length, latency, semantic behavior, and other runtime signals. So the point is not that measurement replaces governance, it gives to the governance the current context.
mm,
Static rules tell us what should happen, and real-time measurement tell us what is happening now.
mm,
So the rule gives you the limit,
mm,
and measurement helps you to adapt.
mm. Sebastian, I love your road analogy because there's something we all can relate so well.
Thank you. And with my English speaking, it's very more easy for me to
Yeah,
use image.
yeah,
Sebastian,
wonderful image.
you're great at this. It's very, very clear. In fact, I look at your image and I'm thinking, yeah, that's exactly what we can apply in class.
Yeah,
So in other words, I can say the limit is 100, but then you're going to decide your judgment in between that, and that will be based on the amount of effort that you put in
yeah,
into it, the reflection, and so on. So
yeah.
yeah, I can relate to that. Thank you.
So if the technology is constantly moving, policy can't just be about checking boxes. Thomas, your React framework focuses on making student thinking visible. How do you evaluate a student on their process rather than their output when the AI tool itself is a moving target?
It's a very good point. But what we have to accept is that tech will always change. So
Mm,
this is not necessarily something new. It's
mm,
just that this time around, possibly the administration and the educators, they don't have a choice to change
mm,
because the entire landscape has changed.
mm,
My focus is on responsible use of AI
mm.
as well as asking a really valuable question, which is how do you know that you know? So, in essence, when you ask this to
Yeah,
a student,
yeah.
it's a different dimension of
Mm,
thinking that gets triggered. How do
mm,
you know that you know?
mm,
So, coming back to the guidelines or coming back to the idea of evaluation, we found a way to make it very simple. We
mm,
said, rely on the assignments that you normally had.
mm,
Just keep those. It's just we're going to ask you to also answer a few follow-up questions. So when I apply it in my class, I give the assignment, I give the report, I get the feedback from the student, I get the report. Then I also get a follow-up at the end, an appendix that says, this was my thinking as I was going throughout it.
mm,
So the
mm,
React framework is
mm,
basic questions like the reason why you used it,
mm.
the evidence that you use as an input,
Yeah.
uh, the
Mm,
the accountability. What did you
mm,
do? What did
mm,
the
mm,
machine do? The
mm,
constraints that you've encountered. Was there
mm,
times where you saw hallucinations and so on?
mm,
And the trade-off. Did
mm,
you win something by doing it yourself?
mm,
Was it of better quality because you decided to expand your research, for instance, through assisted
mm,
research online and so on?
mm,
So then the next question becomes, okay, good, but how do I measure that, evaluate it equitably
mm,
throughout?
mm,
So,
mm,
because we're able to provide a structured approach, then I can use this in order to give similar similar feedback and um, valuable points for students to improve across the class and
mm,
also compare it to the class. So this way it becomes a baseline for me to be able to say, here's the rubric,
mm,
and I can evaluate that. And even better,
mm,
because we are in education, so there's a component which is the formative evaluation,
mm,
where the student hasn't finished the entire class,
mm,
and it's an opportunity for us to go through a structured uh,
mm,
dialogue. I prefer to think of
mm,
it as a discussion.
mm,
And then we can compare that to the final evaluation,
mm,
which includes, again, a discussion. So the student
mm,
gets to see comparing the two,
mm,
their progress. I get to see their progress, and this
mm,
helps me to
mm,
do a better job as a teacher, really.
mm. I like in the beginning you mentioned about kind of a logbook there, the process, before they reach to the final answer, but at least the steps they took. So kind of the preparing a logbook. And I think itself is a huge learning. So they know exactly what are the steps they took to come up to that particular answer.
Yeah, because if I ask the simple question, which
Yeah.
is, how
Yeah.
do you know that you know?
Yeah.
Well, why don't you document that?
Yeah.
Because it's going to help you to reflect on your own learning.
Yeah.
And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, they
Mm,
are becoming responsible for their own learning. They're aware that
mm,
they're aware. So, a
mm,
very interesting
mm.
approach to the cognitive skills
Yeah.
of just thinking.
Yeah. Wonderful. Focusing on process over outcome is such an important distinction. Let's bring these two worlds together. How could real-time observations like Neomundi work inside higher education? Could a student check stability dashboards before submitting their work?
I think it could be very natural.
Mm,
For example, before I leave home, I check the weather. If it's rain, I take an umbrella. So the weather reports give me the information, but for decision.
mm, mm,
You can imagine a textbook that change a little bit each day. You will want to know what's changed before
mm,
relying on it.
mm,
So a student could have the same kind of signal for an AI system. Is it stable today? Has something changed? Should I be more careful? So the goal is not to tell the student what to think. I think the
mm,
goal is to give the student
mm,
better information so they
mm,
can make a better decision.
mm,
In that way, measurement that does
mm,
not replace the
mm,
judgment. It gives judgment better information.
mm,
In higher education, I would say it's very similar
mm,
because we have some comparison points to we'll do research, for instance,
mm,
and it's not the idea of just finding the source citations. It's to fully understand, is this applicable? Can I replicate it? What was the amount of authority that stands behind it? Was it peer reviewed? So when we look at a tool, can students look at the tool so that they are going to know if they're, I would call it the synthetic advisor, is giving them some sources or some opinions? Can I trust it?
mm,
And I think that's a very normal habit for students who are in research, for instance. They they should be questioning, can I trust AI today? Because the
mm.
impact on me is going to be considerable.
It sounds like we are talking about a complete redesign of how we evaluate our tools. Thomas, if model performance changes from day to day, university rules become outdated quickly.
Yeah.
How does a framework-based approach help educators maintain good judgment when the ground is moving?
The ground will always be moving.
Mm,
And in fact, I think that's one of those um, constants
mm,
where perhaps this is one of the reasons why the students actually went to higher education in the first place, because
mm,
they realize that we live in an unstable environment where everything is changing in the world and so on. And how do I respond to those changes in the world? So, in a career track education program, let's say that it's business administration or computer science and so on, it's going to be very important for the students to be able to compose, to behave, and to react and adapt to changing environments. So I'm lucky in the sense that my my college has accepted that, and we were welcome to bring ideas in terms of how to help the students navigate an unstable environment. Um, so I guess it's not the idea that when the policy is published that it's set in stone. It's the idea of working with it and determining which parts are going to be pretty much constants and they represent life
mm,
because life is ever changing,
mm.
and which parts really, as educators and benefactors of the educational system, we will have to change. So
Right.
we're discovering as we go along.
Yeah,
The honest answer is that we're
yeah,
discovering as we go along. This is a frontier, and it's
yeah,
exciting,
yeah,
but it also comes with a lot of responsibility. Sometimes
yeah.
I question myself, and I ask a lot of
Mm,
opinions from colleagues.
yeah, yeah. Basically, keep it open mind and ready for all the new changes comes along.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to a bigger question about what we are teaching. Looking 5 years ahead, how does AI literacy need to change? Are we moving away from teaching students how to prompt and toward teaching them how to monitor an unstable system?
So it's interesting because in the degree program, I actually teach prompting. What I can tell you is that I've moved immediately away from here's the recipe for
Mm,
prompting, here's the perfect recipe for
mm,
prompting. Well, it doesn't really exist because
mm,
tools like Neomundi and also just good observations, they tell us that the system is going to be unstable. So expect for the problems to occur based on any type of input, the output could be affected. So I teach my students to think about the prompt itself and what could go wrong in terms of what the way that they're asking the question and what they receive as an output, and is that representative of the answer? So going forward, I guess what we're really talking about is becoming AI literate.
yeah.
So as we become AI literate, what we want to focus on is the developing the skill
Mm,
of discernment and judgment and a good application in the right context,
Mm,
because I still think that students should be able to spot for themselves what could go wrong.
mm,
That's always a very good question. If they're able to do that, then we're starting to prepare them well for their professional practice.
mm,
Totally agree with Thomas. Prompting is useful, but is not enough. We also need to teach people to observe, verify, question, and adapt. If the system can change, so the user need to stay responsible for the decision. So AI literacy is not only how do I ask the machine, it is also how do I know when I should trust, check, slow down, or change my approach. So we have to be the driver of our decision, and the main skill is to take decision is the ability to adapt in real time.
If monitoring is the new literacy, ignoring system stability is a blind spot. As automated AI tools become standard across industries, what is the main risk institutions are overlooking right now?
For me, the biggest unmanaged risk is invisible change.
Mm,
Organizations often see the final error, the bad decision of the or the incident, but they may not see the drift that came before it.
mm,
It is like a car. We would rather detect the engine problem before the breakdown. With
mm,
AI, we need to observe before the failure. That give people time to verify,
mm,
slow down, change the workflow, or ask for a human review. So for me, the biggest unmanaged risk is the invisible change.
mm,
We often see the accident and we do not see the drift that
mm,
came before
mm,
the accident.
mm, mm, yeah.
It's a very good point. And if I may add on that,
Mm,
um, we see the drift. We don't see the drift. We see the accident.
mm,
If we're talking at the institutional level, not all institutions, but some of them are not managing the risk of not reacting in time.
mm,
Some of them are aware of the drift that could occur in education itself,
mm,
where the the result, it could be disastrous if we
mm,
don't react to it.
mm,
And it's not about using my framework, it's
mm,
about just simply reacting as educators and as institutions. We risk diluting the value of the degree itself.
mm,
And that's going to be even worse because we're going to be changing the perception out there
mm,
of what that degree means in the first place. So I think what we have to focus on really is ensuring that the organizations manage and decide on what is their responsibility towards the student,
mm,
to be aware of the use of AI in general and sort of accept it within a good structure and work with it so that by the time the student is going through the process, they're already developing the habits that will prepare them for future life. The organizations, institutions that are not managing that risk right now, it's going to be very difficult for them to catch up later on.
yeah. You both made a strong point for why our approach needs to change. I want to look at how your own work is building these solutions. Sebastian, as AI systems grow more complex, what is next for Neomundi? What new types of drift are you working to measure?
Currently, the Neomundi instrument analyzes the stability of the semantic stream
Mm, okay.
for generative
Mm,
AI. But
mm,
what I have invented is a universal detector. So I
mm,
would like in the future it that my instrument be able to detect stability and
Mm,
drift in financial, sorry, video and stream and image stream.
mm,
It's also a measure that I believe is fundamental for this measure. From this measure, there is a various application can support multiple infrastructure without requiring change to them. So it's represent a major roadmap,
mm,
and we just start.
mm,
So today we measure the semantic behavior, and tomorrow we want to measure border behavioral stream.
mm. That's great. And turning to the education side, Thomas, with the React framework, what is the next step for your work at the Business Physics AI Simulation Lab?
Well, the good news is that the business physics lab, originally what we did is that we simulated what would be the future skills. So we fed it the World Economic Forum's identified skills for a good labor force, as well as the OECD, the important aspects of learning, engaging, creating, managing, and shaping AI for the future. And that sort of gave us a simulation environment so that we could figure out what we're proposing. Does it make sense? How do we think educators would respond to it? How do we think that students would respond to it? So we had a combination of the synthetic data, and we had a combination of feedback directly from our customers. Like, I keep on calling my students customers, and I think I should never change, because that's exactly the way we should look at it. So coming back to what we were doing, we were simulating the synthetic data from the simulation environment in the lab, as well as real responses from our students, directly as we were having discussions from them. So that is what led us to refining and evolving the React framework. Right now, what we have is that we were able to have two professors of computer science join our board.
Mm,
And the next iteration is the application
mm,
of React and evolving it towards computer science. Um, I'll give you an example of the first benefit that we got. Observations that
mm,
for computer science, it's very specific.
mm,
So for instance, the most recent question that we have is, if I'm asking the students to produce a report on comparing different softwares, that's
mm,
very nice.
mhm,
But how do I use React in conjunction with a coding assignment? Well, this becomes interesting because there is an added benefit in
mm,
this dimension, where in computer science, if we get a little bit more
mm,
reflection going, we may not end up with code that is all over the place
mm,
based on who you gave it to. In computer science, we call that spaghetti code because it's all over the place. So we're learning that. The third iteration that we will want to look at is in
mm,
the nursing
mm,
department. And not anything complicated to get started, but just
mm,
in iterations. We go forward, we learn from it, we refine, and we share with our colleagues.
mm,
So that's really my main focus at the
mm,
business physics
mm,
at the moment.
mm. Wonderful. It's great to see how fast both measurement and teaching are evolving to meet this challenge. Fast forward to the year 2030.
Okay.
If we successfully shift our focus from what can AI do to what is the AI risk today, what does a mature AI literate university look like?
For me, Matter University does not teach students to obey AI. Um, it teaches them to work with AI while keeping judgment and responsibility.
Mm,
Students can see when systems change, they know when to verify, they know when to ask for help, they know when not to use the answer, and technology give the signals, human make the decision,
mm,
and that is for me the culture I would like to see. The future of AI is not less human judgment,
Mm.
but it would be a better human judgment.
Mm.
For my answer, in terms of the way that I envision universities going forward, I think we already have an indicator of
Mm.
what universities will
Mm.
look like in the
Mm.
future.
Mm.
And to illustrate this, I would invite
Mm.
uh, the viewers and fellow educators to observe what is
Mm.
being done right now by an organization called Law Zero, lawzero.org. So
Mm.
I guess it illustrates nicely that this is the ground, the starting point.
Mm.
Law Zero has been created and assembled by Yoshua Bengio,
Mm.
Professor Bengio, from originally from the Mila Institute, so quite an authority in Canada and in
Mm.
artificial intelligence in general.
Mm.
And when I look at what they're doing, the way that they're approaching countries, organizations, uh, UNESCO, um, they bring a very compelling argument, which is let's focus on safety by design.
Mm.
Safety by design in the way that we use the AI, the way that we code for it, and the way that we apply it, let's say, for society.
Mm.
And that made me think, what is the equivalent of the safety of the learning
Mm.
by design? So therefore, if I say that I have a responsibility to preserve the learning process, then why don't I think of everything that I do in terms of safety of learning by design? So if we can make the leap towards what does this mean for a university? It's just that it's becoming far clearer that the role of the university is not to run through degrees and to run through questions on exams and to hand out um, the grading based on
Mm.
outputs that could have
Mm.
easily come from the AI.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think it's a mindset shift and
Mm.
also a philosophy and embracing the idea that our focus has to be something that answers the question.
Mm.
Is it preserving the safety of the learning by
Mm.
design? So
Mm.
our pedagogical approach, everything that we produce, if
Mm.
it's answering that question, then I think that represents a very good university in 2030.
If there's one thing I'm taking away from our conversation today, it's that AI literacy can be a one-time lesson. It's an ongoing practice of supervision, real-time measurement, and critical judgment.
Yes.
Thank you, Sebastian and Thomas, for
Exactly.
sharing your
Thank
insights.
you.
Thank you very much.